Hey guys, welcome to the Supplement Engineer channel. My name is Robert Chinetsky. I'm joined today by two of my international brothers in arms in the supplement industry from the Final Scoop podcast, Lucas Rutkowski and Robert Samborski of Apollo Nutrition. This is not an official podcast. This is more of a kind of like a quick hit and run research review that Lucas just stumbled upon. And I thought it would be kind of fun for us to do this. I've been wanting to, you guys know I'm an ingredient nerd. And I always like to go down the wormhole. Lucas very much is as well. And so he just stumbled across this new study going over leucine. We all know that leucine is the anabolic trigger that ignites mTORC pathways, the mechanistic target of rapamycin, which has downstream effects as far as muscle protein synthesis stimulation and whatnot. So there's a new study that's investigating maybe leucine isn't quite as potent as an anabolic trigger as we thought. So before we get into the study, how are you doing, my friends?
Good. It is like I looked on the study just briefly, but it's very interesting.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Here is the study. Whoops. Okay. Newly published July 29th, 2021 in the Journal of Applied Physiology. We got Di-Leucine ingestion is more effective than leucine in stimulating muscle protein turnover in young males, a double-blind randomized controlled trial. All right, so this is the abstract of the study. Here is the entire thing. So this was part of a dissertation for a student named Alamia out of the University of Illinois. Okay, and so a quick breakdown. So we know that leucine, just free-form L-leucine, is a single amino acid that is known between 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine stimulates muscle protein synthesis fairly robustly. Di-leucine is a dipeptide, so it's going to be two molecules or two versions of L-leucine that are bonded together. And so what they did in this study is that they gave individuals either 2 grams of pure L-leucine or they gave them 2.47 grams of the Di-leucine mixed into 150 milliliters of water. Okay, so after an overnight fast, participants received a primed constant infusion of L-phenylalanine, which is an amino acid tracer, so they can measure muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown rates. After administration of each of the things, plasma insulin, glucose, leucine, and Di-leucine concentrations were also measured. Results from the study demonstrated that Di-leucine stimulates muscle protein synthesis to a greater extent than leucine. There were no differences in muscle protein breakdown between conditions. Plasma levels of insulin, glucose, leucine, and Di-leucine concentrations did not differ between concentrations. They conclude by saying these data suggest that Di-leucine may be used in food fortification or clinical feeding formulas to enhance the anabolic properties of meals. So that's the high-level stuff. So at that point, before all of you run and start dumping your tubs of amino acids into the toilet like a crack dealer trying to evade the feds, let's dig a little bit deeper into what's actually going on here. So some background on dipeptides. They're organic compounds composed of 2 amino acids. Other dipeptides that y'all may have seen used in supplements before are something like sustamine, which is L-glutamine bonded to L-alanine, or you've seen the the tripeptides and vasodrive AP, those casein lactotripeptides. Okay, so we've got literature review. Let's get to the actual discussion of everything right here. And I'll post the link to this actual study in the comments after this is done, okay? All right, here they're giving background of previous leucine studies where they're comparing either leucine ingestion, essential amino acid supplementation, whey protein supplementation, and various markers of protein synthesis. All right, so here's where we go. Dipeptides are organic compounds composed of 2 amino acids. They can be either the same or different amino acids, as we mentioned before, in the case of sustamine, which is glutamine and alanine, which actually improves the uptake and bioavailability of L-glutamine. Dipeptides have been demonstrated to have a variety of uses, which include artificial sweeteners, treatment options for hypertension, and use of nutritional supplements. The hypertension is probably referencing the vasodrive AP lactotripeptides that are in there. I'm sure there's some other ones as well. I'm just not as well versed in those. All right. Phenology. Chapter results. Okay. All right, discussion. All right, so to our knowledge, we are the first group to report findings on muscle protein turnover, protein synthesis versus protein breakdown to dipeptides in humans. Interestingly, a quantity of Di-Leucine 2.47 grams, which is similar to a quantity of leucine contained in whole food dietary protein sources 2 grams, stimulated a roughly 60% difference in muscle protein synthesis. There was no differences in protein breakdown between leucine and Di-Leucine conditions. In turn, these results show the potential of Di-Leucine and more broadly dipeptides to enhance muscle protein synthesis and net protein balance. Leucine ingestion did not result in increased rates of muscle protein synthesis from baseline values. The inability to stimulate muscle protein synthesis could be attributed to providing a dose that was too low to initiate an anabolic response. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's usually between 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine is needed to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So they were giving a suboptimal dose right here. So that's something important to keep in mind.
Question is, if you have that information and, obviously you didn't make it up. I mean, clearly you're basing it on something. The question that to be asked is, why did they use, arguably undosed amount?
Yeah, and that's not, I guess they're saying 2 grams is what is contained in a whole food dietary source. So I think maybe they'd be basing this on the assumption that the average individual, and we know that the average individual's nutrition habits are crap, for lack of a more sophisticated or nice term, but the average individual eats like shit. So their meals, by and large, probably aren't hitting that 2.5 to 3 gram leucine threshold. Now, guys like you, me, Lucas, Shane, guys that eat a substantial quantity of protein at each meal from a high quality source like chicken, steak, fish, or whatever, or whey protein, we're going to be hitting that 2.5 to 3 gram leucine threshold each time. So maybe they were trying to point this more towards the general population than those seeking to maximize, muscle growth and fat loss.
You know what? I think it was also due to the fact that, some supplements or some products may just contain, let's say, 10 grams of EAAs, and which of those 10 grams of EAAs they include like 1.8 to 2 grams of leucine, in general. That's why probably. Mm-hmm. It's also mentioned here that they said the study using 1.8 grams of leucine as a part of 10-gram EAA beverage was able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis rates to a similar degree as a 10 grams of EAA beverage containing 3 grams of leucine.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to what they've noticed in previous studies, is that if they compared just a standard essential amino acid blend versus something that was like a whey protein source that had essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids, there's some other kind of anabolic synergistic effect or complementary effect in there where the non-essential amino acids are having some kind of additive benefit in boosting protein synthesis rates higher again.
I think that leucine works like a switch, and after that, all the rest of amino acids are stimulating and just help work synergistically, basically, with muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah.
But they need this extra, starter, which is like leucine.
Agreed. So here are the general conclusions after they go through all of the minute details. They say the data presented in the study demonstrate that Di-Leucine stimulates increases in muscle protein synthesis rates after 3 hours to a greater extent than leucine. So what they did is they gave these guys either the Di-Leucine or the leucine treatment, and then they took muscle biopsies and blood samples for them over the course of 3 hours. So if you're not familiar with a muscle biopsy, they basically jab this giant gauge needle into your thigh, your bicep, somewhere, and they rip out a piece of your actual muscle tissue. So they did that in addition to doing, it's not fun. I've had a bone marrow biopsy before, as I've mentioned on the podcast. It's any kind of biopsy. You don't want to have to do those. Those aren't fun.
It's not fun.
No. This is demonstrated by the 59.8% difference in fractional synthetic rates between Di-Leucine and leucine after equivalent doses were ingested. Moreover, these data show that a dose of Di-Leucine similar to a suboptimal dose of leucine is able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis rates to a similar degree as an optimal dose of leucine. Lastly, the data in the study provide preliminary support for the use of Di-Leucine as a way to fortify foods for the enhancement of skeletal muscle mass and quality. All right, so what I'm curious, and they even say future work needs to be understood to what is it about the fusing of those two leucine amino acids together that makes it have more anabolic potential than just an equivalent amount of free-form L-leucine on its own. And that's what I'm curious to see. But I guess we can transition this also over to, do you guys think we're going to start seeing the di-leucine dipeptide in essential amino acid formulas? Or are we going to see somebody come out with microencapsulated di-leucine complex with estrogen or something, ridiculous like that?
I think that you will always have somebody who will come up with something based on a study like that, just different. But I will say that it's not that I'm disputing it or whatever. I just think that it has a lot of questions. I'm not convinced, so to speak. It's one study, very random. We could go back and forth and argue on a dosage that is required, because it seems like it's all over the place. And like you said, we all have different requirements because we train different, have different goals, we have different understandings, we have different diet habits. There are so many things that kind of like a contributing factor, and it seems like it's a very, very one-dimensional study, and it's only one study, period. Not saying that it's a bad study, not saying that it's a wrong study either, but it's not conclusive. It's the same thing as, we've seen some of the much criticized by our group trademarks and whatnot, where the studies are very, very limited and not conclusive, not sufficient evidence is presented. So nevertheless, I think from a marketing perspective, look, there are a bunch of fancy words here. There's definitely there is a wow factor to this that can be impressive. So, just like, think about it. We were making fun of encapsulated glutamine, right?
Yeah, but you see that name right there I just highlighted?
Yeah. But how cool does it sound? It sounds cool. It sounds smart. It sounds game-changing. It sounds very innovative. So there will be market for it, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty cheap to manufacture too. So will we see this? I will go on a limb and say yes. I think we will see at least one or two companies jumping on this. Will it be a trend or a pattern? Probably no.
What I think is really promising, but I really would like to see
more.
The spread, like when it comes to like this comparison between leucine and di-leucine, if there's like huge difference. What I mean by that is that we all know that leucine is like is this switch, as we all know, so it helps with muscle protein synthesis. But thus the di-leucine also is like, if it's more anabolic, does it mean that it will help us to build more muscle, or is it gonna just like make the switch, or make the sound of the switch sound longer and harder? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And I find this interesting. You start digging through some of the graphs. The di-leucine ingestion led to a greater spike in protein synthesis, but it also led to a marginally greater increase in protein breakdown as well. Across the 3 hours. That's interesting. Again, this is a very condensed study. We're only looking at one blip on a radar. We're not taking this in the greater context of a 16-week training program where they're consuming adequate dietary protein each day. They're engaged in progressive overload training and all of these things. So this is more like a mechanistic, kind of like a preliminary early study to figure out what's going on. Now, I have no doubt we're going to probably see NNB fund a bunch more studies on di-leucine, and we're going to start to see all kinds of literature like doubles the power of leucine essential amino acid supplements and all of this stuff. I don't want to see it go down that route, because I don't think that's being genuine. I think that's being disingenuous to just amino acid supplementation and where they actually fit in an otherwise well-rounded diet and training program. But we know, just like we saw with S7, a bunch of these other crappy ingredients, is that they're going to see these giant claims off these, very small studies. This was only done in 10 healthy individuals. So I'm glad that it was 10 healthy, active individuals. But, these transient little spikes in protein synthesis, they end up leveling out the longer you are engaged in a healthy lifestyle of eating right, training hard, and all of that stuff, to where don't get too mired down in the details. I don't think we're going to see a tremendous influx of Di-Leucine into the market, because if you go back and you look at some of the other di and tripeptides that we've seen into the market space, Vasodrive AP, Sustamine, they've got good data behind them and they are effective, but they are so goddamn expensive that, I mean, it's almost cost prohibitive to put them in a formula. I mean, for the cost of Sustamine, you could put in like 8 other ingredients. That's how expensive it is, because there have been a couple of companies that I've looked at with, as far as like a post-workout or like a formula to help reduce muscle soreness and improve recovery. We've looked at putting Sustamine in there, and it just got shelved because it's so expensive. They just opted to go the route of, we'll put freeform L-alanine and freeform L-glutamine in there and, hope for the same kind of benefits.
This one also reminds me of like HMB. Also,
yeah, exactly.
Another analog of leucine. So it was like a huge, boom as far as like HMB, and we all know how it ended up. So I hope that this research won't end up the same.
Well, you have so many researchers. Some of them are very, very limited. Some of them are very, very comprehensive, and so sometimes you come across a very, very good ingredient, a very good product, a very good study that does change sort of approach to supplements, formulating, apart from the fact, like Robert said, that some of them are so ridiculously expensive that it's just impossible to do anything with. Like I for example, like Robert mentioned Vasodrive a few times. We know that the actual dose is 508. I mean, that's the actual full dose. But if you have a lot of formulas, then you have the typical 20-40 split, which I'm okay with. But the 20-40 split is meant to be half a dose and full dose, but we see on a full dose 254 versus 508, and then you actually have on a 40 serving, you have half of 254. 254, and the reason for that is because of the cost. So it's let's call it what it is. It's actually underdosed. So besides that, when you look into a formula, into something like this study suggests, it's just not enough evidence. And I remember, some of the, we had some very, very good ingredients in the market, like really that changed the face of the market, so to speak, and they were very innovative, apart from the fact extremely expensive. And then you have something like, for example, and I'm a huge fan of caffeine citrate. I'm a huge fan. I really like it. But in essence, and I'm going to have it in some of the upcoming formulas because I do like it. But honestly, I'm okay with just caffeine anhydrous. It's still going to hit you fast. It's still going to hit you fine. You're okay getting away with it. So is there an actual need for citrate? No. It's a good addition, but there is no need for it. That's the same thing as we had when citrulline malate came on the scene. Everybody was going fucking crazy how much better it is than pure citrulline. Everybody was talking about it, that citrulline malate is way better. That's the way to go. It's so more effective. There was, so to speak, evidence, which by now we know, yeah, it's there. There is something to it, but is it better than pure citrulline? That's a huge question mark. I think it's potato kind of a situation. It depends on the preference. We do know that pure citrulline is a lot more expensive than citrulline malate because there is more citrulline in it. Simple as that. But everybody started going crazy about it, and there were studies that were very, very limited and not very convincing that it's such an overwhelmingly better combination, citrulline malate and citrulline. But everybody jumped on it. I jumped on it myself. Then later on, I realized that it's definitely up for debate. So I think that this is kind of a very, very similar situation. But I do agree there is something to it. I mean, they're definitely presenting a study. They're definitely presenting some research behind it. But Robert is right. You have 10 individuals. 10 is better than 9, but it's not as good as 11.
Plus, it's on humans, not on rats.
Yeah,
that's also
Yeah, healthy
also
guys that are
about the cost.
recreationally trained. That's a good thing. This is
Yeah.
more of what we need in the industry. I just don't want this to get to the levels of absurdity that
It's
S7 got to, with supplement companies jumping on it, and every product was labeled 230% increase in nitric oxide.
well,
The
Yeah.
dipeptide's intriguing, but the cost, I got to imagine, all of the stuff I've seen from NNB thus far is fairly expensive. I mean, like dihydroberberine and a bunch of the other stuff, it's fairly expensive. So, I mean, I like the new research that's coming out, but
yeah.
show me something that's worthwhile. Compare it to 3 grams of leucine. Don't give me some suboptimal dose of leucine. Give it to what's currently in the market, and let's see more studies from there.
Well, the reason why you don't see much in terms of like ingredients from N&B in formulas is simple because of the cost. The cost is just ridiculous. Not saying that all the products are crap, but there's definitely, there's some things are very, very promising, but the cost is just ridiculous. And why did we see S7 in every freaking formula? Because it's actually fairly inexpensive. It's fairly So everybody was putting a little trademark with a little S7 and saying that it's the best thing since sliced bread. But the truth is we know the truth. And the thing is, like I said, it's a good thing that we have 10 individuals. It's a good thing that it's actually humans, not rats. It's a good thing it's an actual study. But we cannot dispute the fact that it's just A, one study, and B, we need a little bit... I am on a movie set, but we need a little bit more because the individuals everybody is different, I mean, and again, the age factor comes into a play, the experience factor comes into a play, the needs, individual needs, whether a person is a professional athlete or not, a little bit like, for example, creatine, right? We know creatine works. Creatine works whether you're 16. Creatine works whether you're 97 or whether you're a professional athlete or an amateur. So we know across the board, it's been proven so many times that ingredient works, period. Everything else, there is, it's up for debate. And some of the things are just ridiculously expensive based on 1 or 2 studies. And that's the reason why you won't see some of the ingredients in a lot of formulas, because it's just, number one, not cost effective. Number two, not enough evidence.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we've had a few people chime in. What's the cost between the 2 leucines? We don't know that, but I can guarantee you that a single free-form amino acid is going to be considerably less expensive than a dipeptide. To go through the process of actually chemically bonding those 2 amino acids together, just look back at sustamine, the vasodrive, AP, lactotripeptides, all of that kind of stuff, and actual bonded citrulline malate. You don't actually see bonded citrulline malate, which is citrulline and malic acid anymore. You don't see that. It's just bulk L-citrulline tossed in with bulk malic acid, and then they shake it up to get the ratio of citrulline to malate that you want.
Yeah.
But it's exceedingly expensive. So I don't anticipate seeing like this mega dosed EAA formula, which will probably get. There are some underdosed BCAA formulas, or like 5 gram BCAA formulas, and they'll be touting this new dipeptide leucine, saying it's so much better than regular leucine. But the cost is, you're going to start seeing probably more 5 gram blends of BCAAs, or really small doses, like maybe 6 grams total of EAAs, and you're going to have that 2.47 gram dose of dipeptide of the Di-Leucine in there, is what I would imagine you're going to start seeing. From a few companies. It's not going to be like an industry-wide thing.
Bro, it's
but just
funny.
a few.
It's funny you're saying that. It's like, I'm just like seeing the tubs right now. It's like twice as anabolic as your normal EAAs or BCAAs.
Agreed. Yeah, you're going to see it coming. Wheats, you guys are killing me delaying the Chaos V3 label release. Get on that, Robbie.
It's going to be unstacked, right?
Actually, just yell at Shane. Send Shane a nasty email right now saying release the Chaos V3 label.
We'll wake up in like 2 hours probably or something.
It's a prop blend with some bullshit.
All kinds of tren and clenbuterol and everything else in there.
It's manufactured illegally in my basement.
Don't forget about some SARMs. Extra.
Rad 140, BBC 157, all the good stuff. Creamy, those aren't lights. That's the R as the result of transcendent levels of caffeine. There you go, Robbie. Lucas's grows from eventually ascending to holy levels of caffeine intake. Well, he does have the crucifix behind his head there too, so he's got the holy levels going on there. He just needs enough caffeine.
The Christ is watching, but he's scared.
Reformulation is coming. No, not on most DEAs. No, there's the average consumer isn't going to give a shit about Di-Leucine versus regular L-leucine. The average consumer doesn't give two shits about it. And they're not going. The supplement companies aren't going to be able to pass the cost on and justify it to the end consumer.
Yeah, that's the thing between regular people and geeks. It's exactly the same situation as with like in our industry. Some companies may just pick it up, but it's not going to be like all of them. Maybe Correct. Just like few of those companies will decide to jump on the bandwagon and just like say, okay, let's give it a try. But I don't think that it's going to be like a mainstream or something.
No. You might see something like Caged Muscle do something like a standalone, like leucine supplement or something like that, since they have a BCAA formula and an EAA formula and all that stuff. You might see something like that.
Robbie's gonna drop another like
fucking shit. Wow.
Brooke, I love the research. More research. Well, that's what this has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. And whenever we get a good study like this, because Lucas is always tossing studies into our group chat, and I'll come across some stuff on my own and everything like that. So we might start doing more of these little quick hitting, like surprise. We're live on YouTube going over this stuff, and the channel it'll always keep up there. So for anybody else that wants to
probably
hop on and see it.
On a lighter note, just because I have to go soon, I was just thinking about this. You know, like Lucas is now kind of like fucking notorious for stems and mushrooms. So because I'm going to just blame Lucas on the fact that we have lion's mane in certain product. And how when it comes to anabolic steroids, there's a term called Decadick that apparently Decadick. So I'm going to fucking print t-shirts with Lucas's face on it. That's going to say lion's mane dick is a myth.
Lion's mane tanks libido. Get a hotter girlfriend. That's my slogan.
I'm down for
that. Brooke, in the grand scheme of things, is it really that important to look into this type of study? Does it need to be done? I think where this might have more practical application, the study authors hinted at this. I think this could be beneficial maybe in instances of clinical settings, where somebody's suffering from some kind of muscle wasting disease or something like that, where they can't consume a ton of food and they're going to need to get by with, those are the instances where we see things like glutamine actually having benefits, where you have essential amino acids or leucine, high doses of leucine supplementation having benefit in clinical settings where people are in severe illness, severe injury, severe trauma, something like that, and they actually can't consume substantial amounts of whole protein sources. So I think these little kinds, and that's maybe where something like HMB or HICA might have a benefit as well, where you can't ingest enough whole foods. You're either in a coma or you're just knocked out. You have low appetite. You just went through surgery. You can't tolerate a lot of food. You go through you take these certain supplements, and that can help stave off muscle wasting and might actually help you to retain lean muscle mass, support your immune system, support your GI system, and all of your other vital organs as well. What do you guys think?
Well,
I agree.
Actually, I agree with what she said, but I can definitely see what Brooke is saying. There's so many studies. There's so many studies. Unfortunately, majority of those studies are baseless, waste of time. So, can't look into, I guess, every study, and not every study is super important. This is more, I would get, curiosity type of a thing. I don't think anything, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there is anything groundbreaking, game-changing, earth-shattering information in here. It would be nice, actually. I would be curious to see some more on this subject. But to say, like Robert said, that all of a sudden the EAA's, BCAA's game will totally change based on this, very, very much doubt. So yeah, Brooke is right. Not every study needs to be paid like extreme attention to. This is more like, like you have a full-time job and you have a hobby. This is a hobby.
I don't think it's gonna be a huge impact on the industry, but at the same time, it's nice to see something different, because supplement industry are focusing mainly on like creatine. We see tons of studies on creatine and so on.
Yeah, we don't need another creatine or caffeine study. We know that shit works. Give us some new stuff.
Yeah, but we already know, tons of stuff about, creatine. But what gears my gears is like when I'm reading about like mushrooms or like amino acids. That's why this is something really cool, and I really want to see a bit more. But as far as like leucine, we all know that leucine works and it's a like anabolic trigger. But this is something really promising, and I'm really hopeful for more. So yeah, man.
There is
Yeah.
also a question that kind of begs to be asked is like just leucine at the certain amount versus dileucine at the certain amount. If you're going to have, like Robert said, dileucine is going to cost more money, which is pretty much a safe bet, then maybe just getting leucine, but more of it can compensate for dileucine. I mean, it's just like a little argument, but I'm not ruling it out either. So then, in essence, you literally got nothing.
Yeah.
See, Robic, Creamy's gonna buy a shirt. So
There we go.
But sure, I'd wear it.
Brooke was just thinking if the money would have been better put elsewhere, but that makes more sense. It seems so singular. Yeah, I mean, I'm always for if you got the money to devote to research and find some new pathways, I'm all for it. I'm just trying to think what's the practical application of this. I don't see it yet from like the supplement industry for the sports nutrition side, but for people in a clinical setting that might be at risk for muscle loss or muscle wasting, I could see there being benefit for this.
by the way, are you guys familiar with the study where they're like, when post-workout, they were adding to your meals additional amino acids to bump up the anabolic response?
Yeah.
And I think that has some, correlation between these two studies. And I think that if you add on top of your like protein threshold extra amino acids, which will, increase your muscle protein synthesis. So I think maybe here is some relation. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I definitely think you could, and that kind of goes back to what we've said a few times. Is there you could put this with some, like you could bulk up somebody. Maybe this could be beneficial for vegans or something like that. You could put it into a vegan protein powder to up the leucine content if there's a way that they can synthesize this, make it vegan friendly or something like that. For average people that consume whey protein powder, chicken, steak, I don't know if they need that.
Yeah, what I mean by that is that, for example, you are like eating your post-workout meal, let's say it's going to be a chicken breast,
Yeah.
and you add on top of that, let's say, a scoop of EAAs or scoop of BCAAs, and it's going to be a double whammy effect.
I don't think it happened. I would have to go back and look at that study because let's say you hit that 2.5 to 3 gram leucine ratio with your whole foods meals. You add another 5 grams on leucine on top of that. I don't think it doubles up your protein synthesis rates. I mean, like once you've maxed it out, just adding more on top of it isn't going to make you be that much more anabolic and build that much more muscle mass. It's not this isn't a situation where more is better. It's just like you hit that plateau
The threshold.
and to keep going. Yeah, that threshold stays there. It doesn't like super max it or anything. So we actually need to get working on that, Brooke. I know that is a long time coming. We need to figure out like a t-shirt stores. I got to look into that because we could be doing some final scoop shirts. We could come up with some funny slogans for lion's mane and libido and stuff like that.
Yeah.
With that, I got it. It says we'll put on the front of the shirt, does lion's mane tank libido? And on the back say, ask my wife. Something like that.
KSM 666.
Okay, 6 is the answer to anything.
People start taking 50 grams of this before their meals and claim it's comparable to gear, like they are doing with turkestrone. 100%. Yeah, don't be surprised. There's going to be some shady charlatans out there hawking it.
Yeah, I commented yesterday on Review Brothers post, and god damn it, my mailbox just exploded. I mean, I got messages on top of messages. I regretted actually making a comment, but
So much love.
Well, I couldn't resist because there was a claim that testosterone is as good, if not better, than D-bol and GH. I mean, I'm all for like good ingredients that are helping, that will provide certain benefit and whatnot. I'm just totally against blowing smoke up consumers' ass, and making claims that are just not true, and. So but the thing is like we see it all across the board. Everybody comes with a supplement, better than steroids, that is better than this, that is better than that. And at the end of the day, it's just it's getting too far. But studies like these, they actually help, and we're not criticizing the study, we're just actually discussing it. And I'm all for it. I'm 100% all for it, whether it's a good study or a bad study, meaning, whether it's a positive result or a negative result. I think that this definitely, it's definitely something that that is very, very helpful and educational, and needs to be broken down and discussed. Not necessarily criticizing it or or glorifying it, just discussing it for what it is. I think it's a great study. I think it's beneficial, and I think more studies are needed. But as of right now, I would reserve my opinion to say that good or bad. I think just any study is better than no study.
Agreed.
100%.
One can never have too many shirts. Innuendos are always in fashion. I'd agree.
And what would be better than look at a smiling face?
Like,
I
gonna
agree.
be famous.
Random consumer who's not knowledgeable might really get impression it's like gear. No need to give a false impression. Yeah, that's probably an issue for a whole podcast we could devote to those kind of shenanigans.
Have a podcast discussing it, because I think that it's something that is getting out of hand, and I'm definitely on board with that. We could have a guest for it that is, also in the industry, or it could be just us. But like I said, I mean, looking at some of the claims that companies are making, review channels are making, self-proclaimed experts are making, I think that us considering, and I pride myself of being part of this group, because we actually call the truth, no matter what. And before I go, there is something, since it's a special edition, that I want to say that I'm very, very proud of you guys, and I'm proud of Shane for calling out Charles Glass's bullshit pre-workout, because to me, nobody else did, at least from our kind of a community of like people that do podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Utmost respect for Charles Glass as a trainer. I think he's a legend in the sport, but his pre-workout is exactly what's wrong with this industry. Somebody capitalizing on the knee and releasing a completely embarrassing and disrespectful product on the market. So I'm very proud of you guys for calling out, on this bullshit. And, this is the reason why I do this every week, and proud to be part of it. And when I do miss it, Robert gives me hell, so fuck him.
There we go.
All
right, my friends.
Thank you so much, Robert, for including me in this. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Robbie. Thanks for hopping on. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks, brother.
For the rest of the listeners tuning in, thank you guys for tuning in for this research highlight, quick hit and run. Lucas, thank you for sending the study my way, my man. This was awesome. Keep flooding my WhatsApp with studies, and we're going to start doing this a little bit more frequently, because this helps make sure I stay on top of it, and any information we can pass on to it, because sometimes on the final scoop or some of the other stuff, just the conversation is so good. I don't want to send us down a research hole where our guests may not be interested in it. The people that tune into it may not be interested, but this is really fun. I like just, we'll find a study. We can take some time to review it. If we don't want to just get it like the second we come across, we jump on and start talking, because I don't want us to talk out of our ass or anything. If we can come prepared with a few notes. But I think this format is great. Just a quick, 15, 20, 30 minute, however long we go into the study. We can give a little bit of context into what's going on. But yeah, if you guys that are catching this, if you like these kind of research quick hits, let us know in the comments down below, or if you come across anything, you got a question about a study that maybe you saw or you saw somewhere else, shoot it to us, and we can make it for another little quick informal video like this. But yeah, I think this was good, man. I appreciate it. And if you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe to the Supplement Engineer podcast on a podcast cruising platform if you are not subbed yet. And thank you all, and we will catch you guys next time.
Cheers, guys.